The champagne glass slipped from my aunt's hand, shattering across the marble floor like every lie she'd ever told. "Poor people can't understand business," Aunt Carol laughed, her voice sharp, cutting through the chatter like a blade. "Stick to your minimum wage job." Everyone around the table chuckled, nodding like trained seals. Me. I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that tasted like ashes. "My name is Olivia Hartman. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? Felt invisible, dismissed, a shadow in the house you grew up in? That was me, framed in luxury yet mocked for ambition, laughed at for knowledge I was only beginning to gather." I kept my voice calm. "You're absolutely right," I said. The words hit the room like a whisper in a hurricane. They thought I was conceding. They thought I was weak. Thursday morning I called my wealth manager. "Withdraw all support from Carol's ventures," I instructed. By Friday her investments were frozen. The family laughed, not realizing I was already inside their game, moving pieces they didn't even see. Every contract, every account I had influence over, I owned their access. Not just money but power. And I wasn't finished. That night I sat in the dark, the echo of their laughter still in my ears. I watched the city lights flicker like tiny gold coins in the distance, each one a reminder that their security was a paper wall. Soon it would crumble. And as the moon rose over their glass towers I realized, revenge isn't about anger. It's about poetry. It's about the slow burn that makes them feel every second of their betrayal, the weight of every word they ever spoke against you. They mocked me for understanding business, for daring to learn, for daring to exist beyond their small, suffocating expectations. I poured a glass of wine, raised it to the ceiling and whispered to the empty room, "I will show you what $250 million looks like when it's in the hands of the one you tried to destroy." The twist. They'd never see it coming. Not until the silence was deafening, and the truth was all they had left. The morning sunlight cut through the blinds like judgment. Carol's phone kept buzzing, her assistant's messages piling up in a panic. I watched from my penthouse, coffee in hand, the skyline a silent witness to what was unfolding. She didn't know yet that the funds keeping her empire alive had vanished. Every account frozen. Every investment stalled. Every dollar I'd secretly controlled had been pulled, like the rug beneath her feet. "My name is Olivia Hartman. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever seen someone fall slowly, gracefully, like a star burning out in reverse? Felt the satisfaction of a world that once mocked you now trembling under your touch? That was Carol, and everyone around her was too blind to notice she was slipping. I could almost hear her heart racing through the phone line. What is happening?" she stammered, voice cracking, the facade of control melting like wax. The room that once echoed with laughter at my expense now vibrated with panic. I didn't answer. I let the silence speak. Let the fear settle in. Let her taste the emptiness she'd always thrown at me. By noon, whispers were spreading through the family. "Carol's losing everything. She's insolvent." Their disbelief was delicious. I had planted the seeds of chaos, each decision meticulous, invisible, surgical. I was everywhere and nowhere, pulling strings no one realized existed. That evening I received a text from her, trembling words typed in all caps. "Olivia, you did this?" I smiled. A cold, quiet smile. "Not yet," I typed back. "I'm just beginning." I poured another glass of wine, watching the city lights flicker. I thought about every insult, every dismissive laugh, every time she called me naive. They'd all be repaid, measured perfectly, slowly, until they understood the weight of underestimating me. By nightfall, Carol was on the phone to lawyers, accountants, family members. No one could stop the dominoes I had set in motion. And in her panic I realized something. Fear was more powerful than anger. Fear could strip them of dignity. Fear could make them beg. And fear could finally make them listen. The poetic justice of it all? They had spent years teaching me my place. I was done learning. Now I was teaching them theirs. As I closed my laptop I whispered to the empty room, "They thought they controlled the game. They were wrong." And in that moment I felt the first spark of something I hadn't expected. Sweet, dangerous satisfaction. The tension is now escalating, stakes are higher, and the emotional intensity is building. By the time Saturday arrived, the family group chat was a wildfire. Dozens of messages. Dozens of accusations. Dozens of desperate attempts to understand how one of their strongest business pillars had collapsed overnight. I watched it unfold like a private movie. My name is Olivia Hartman. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever realized you were never part of the family, just the convenient target they sharpened their confidence on? That every smile carried the weight of a sneer they thought you were too blind to see? That truth hit me as their panic grew. Because their fear wasn't just about money. It was about losing control. Aunt Carol called my mother first. I knew she would. Your daughter is reckless, she hissed loud enough for me to hear through the thin apartment walls. She sabotaged me. She's dangerous. Dangerous. I let that word settle in my chest like a spark. Mom hesitated. Olivia would never. She's bitter, Carol snapped. She resents us for her own failures. Failures. I almost laughed. At that exact moment, I was on a video call with a private banker, approving the final transfer that would cut off the last silent branch of support I'd been providing for Carol's boutique brand. They never knew the truth. I wasn't the helpless niece clinging to their charity. I was the ghost behind half their liquidity. The irony was almost poetic. That afternoon I drove to my father's old workshop. Dusty, abandoned, quiet. The place where he once taught me that silence is the birthplace of power. That real strength doesn't announce itself. I ran my fingers over the tools he left behind, cold metal humming with memory. Make them apologize to the woman they thought couldn't stand. His voice echoed in my mind. Or maybe it was just me finally listening. As I left the workshop, I felt something shift. Not just revenge. Purpose. By evening, the family held an emergency meeting at Carol's mansion. I watched through the security feed. They never knew I still had access. Her hands trembled as she held the financial reports, pages shaking like fragile leaves in a storm. This is sabotage, she cried. Someone is doing this on purpose. Her husband whispered, who would want to hurt you like this? She hesitated. And for the first time in her life she said my name with fear. Olivia. The room went still. There it was, the moment she realized the girl she mocked had teeth. Sharp ones. I leaned back in my chair, slow. Monday morning the family woke to headlines. Not gossip. Not rumors. But cold, hard facts. Carol's boutique empire. Frozen, paralyzed, millions inaccessible. Every article hinted at mismanagement, yet no one suspected the quiet woman they'd mocked for years was orchestrating the storm. My name is Olivia Hartman. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever seen someone unravel in real time? Felt the delicious tension of watching them stumble while you remain untouched, invisible yet omnipotent? I watched Carol pace her mansion through hidden cameras I'd installed months ago. Each step, each whispered curse, every frantic call to lawyers. Like music to me. She had spent decades belittling me, teaching everyone around that I was naive, foolish, powerless. Now I was the one controlling her pulse. By noon I had leaked anonymous tips to financial blogs about her failing accounts, anonymous whispers in boardrooms, rumors of mismanagement. Within hours, creditors started pulling back. Investors panicked. The empire she built on charm and manipulation was crumbling faster than her pride could handle. And I didn't stop there. I sent subtle messages to her friends, her business partners, even her family, strategically crafted truths that made them question her competence. Every doubt planted, every fear stoked, every alliance she trusted quietly eroded. That evening I received a text from Carol. Olivia, why are you doing this? We're family. Family. The word hit me like a poison I'd swallowed years ago. They called themselves family, but their laughter at my expense had been a daily blade. Their smiles. Thin masks hiding contempt. And now finally I would show them the weight of betrayal. I typed back slowly. Family doesn't laugh at a woman while she learns. Family doesn't dismiss knowledge. Family doesn't survive on the misery of others. She read it. And I could feel the storm behind the screen, though she had no idea where it came from. I poured a glass of wine, watching the sunset over the city skyline, my reflection merging with the fading light. Their empire, their pride, their delusions, they were burning from the inside. And I had the privilege of watching it all unfold, one perfect, calculated moment at a time. As night fell, I whispered to the empty apartment. They think this is chaos. But chaos is only the first act. The second act is their reckoning. The poetic twist? By the time Carol realized I had orchestrated the entire cascade, the world had already begun to turn against her. And I wasn't finished. By Tuesday, the mansion that once held soirees and charity galas now echoed with chaos. Papers scattered across the floor. Carol's voice hoarse from arguing with bankers who no longer returned her calls. Her empire wasn't just cracking, it was caving in. My name is Olivia Hartman. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever watched someone who once towered over you suddenly shrink, their confidence leaking out of them like air from a punctured tire? That slow collapse is an art form, a kind of justice only the quiet ones learn to master. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to show my face. Power is louder in silence. On Wednesday morning, Carol held a meeting with her remaining executives. I watched through the discreet camera hidden in the floral vase she adored. One of the last gifts I ever gave her. Funny how betrayal blooms in plain sight. Her voice shook. We need emergency liquidity. Someone sabotaged us. Someone. He still couldn't say my name out loud. One executive cleared his throat. We've reviewed every transaction. The withdrawals, they were internally authorized. I smiled. That was my signature. Invisible, legitimate, irreversible. Her eyes widened. By who? The room fell silent. They didn't know the answer. But I did. By noon, her social circle began to crumble. Friends she flaunted at every event started distancing themselves. Not because they cared about the truth, but because money was the only language they spoke and she was suddenly mute. And then came the part she never anticipated. Her daughter, my cousin Lily, reached out to me. A shaky voice message. Aunt Carol is losing it. She keeps saying someone inside the family is trying to destroy her. Olivia, she thinks it's you. I paused the message, staring at the frozen waveform on my screen. For the first time, something inside me stirred. Not guilt. Recognition. Lily had always been kind to me. She never laughed. She never mocked. She never joined the chorus. And now she was caught in the fallout of her mother's arrogance. So I called her. Her voice trembled. Olivia, tell me it's not you. The truth balanced on the edge of my tongue like a blade. Clean. Precise. I'm not hurting you, I said softly. I'm removing what's been hurting me. She exhaled shakily. Mom's scared. I've never seen her this way. I closed my eyes. For a moment, just a moment, I saw the child we used to be. Two girls in the yard, building worlds out of chalk and imagination before wealth and cruelty sliced the family into categories. If Carol had ever loved her daughter more than her pride, maybe things would have been different. Before hanging up, Lily whispered, "Please don't destroy her completely." Her plea sat heavy in my chest. But justice has a rhythm. And I had already set the tempo. That night, as the city surrendered to darkness, I whispered to the quiet. Mercy belongs to those who understand pain. Not those who created it. The twist. Carol still believed this was her downfall. She had no idea it was only the unraveling of the first lie. Thursday dawned like a warning siren. The mansion was eerily quiet. Carol hadn't slept. Her assistants tiptoed, afraid of saying the wrong thing. The boardroom that once rang with applause now buzzed with whispers of panic. Every phone call she answered ended in frustration. Every email she sent bounced back with errors. Every so-called ally she relied on had disappeared into silence. My name is Olivia Hartman. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever felt the power of being unseen yet untouchable? Watching someone's empire crumble without lifting a finger, just moving pieces in shadows? That's the art of revenge, quiet, deliberate, surgical. By midday, I had leaked key financial documents to journalists under an anonymous handle. Headlines screamed, Carol Hartman's boutique empire in crisis. Alleged internal mismanagement? Social media exploded. Investors panicked. Suppliers halted shipments. The illusion of control she'd worn like armor was gone. Carol's world contracted around her. She called meetings, tried to negotiate with banks, pleaded with partners, but every door slammed in her face. I watched her collapse in the boardroom, her voice breaking, tears she'd never allowed herself to shed spilling unchecked. And then came the private text from Lily. "Olivia, she's asking about you. She wants to know why you're doing this." I hesitated. I could have struck harder. But I didn't. I was teaching, not punishing blindly. I wanted her to feel the weight of her arrogance. I wanted her to see that the person she laughed at had grown beyond her imagination. I typed carefully. "Because you taught me what hatred looks like." The silence that followed was deafening. Carol read it. I imagined her hands trembling, trying to grasp a concept she thought she had taught me: obedience, meekness, invisibility. And now that lesson had turned into a weapon against her. By evening, the mansion felt like a tomb. The walls that once echoed laughter and music now only reflected her frantic pacing. Carol's confidence shattered. She called me finally in a rare, trembling voice. "Olivia, why?" I let the line go silent. I could hear her inhale sharply, the weight of realization finally sinking in. Her empire wasn't crumbling because of luck or coincidence or some financial glitch. It was me. And that's when I realized, revenge isn't just about making them suffer. It's about making them understand. I poured a glass of wine, looking out over the city that shimmered like a sea of gold. My reflection stared back at me, steady, unshakable, untouchable. The storm I had unleashed wasn't over. But tonight I let them taste the first true bite of fear. "Power," I whispered, "is never given. It is taken. And I have taken mine." The poetic twist? Carol had been the predator all her life. Now for the first time she was the prey. Friday night, and the mansion was silent, haunted. Carol's empire teetered on the edge, every business line she had built now a fragile house of cards. The lawyers whispered about bankruptcy. Investors whispered about fraud. And she whispered my name like a curse, a plea and a recognition all at once. My name is Olivia Hartman. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever watched someone realize that everything they relied on, the pride, the influence, the money they built their identity on, was nothing without the people they underestimated? Carol's panic became performance art. I watched her call everyone she knew, ex-clients, former friends, distant relatives, everyone she had ever wielded like a weapon. No one answered. No one returned her calls. The walls of her life had turned to mirrors, reflecting her arrogance back at her in a way she could no longer ignore. By midday, I arranged an anonymous settlement of her remaining assets. Nothing was stolen, just frozen, redirected, and strategically leveraged. Every transfer I had quietly approved ensured she had nothing to rebuild without me knowing. And then came the call I had been waiting for. Her voice trembled, barely a whisper. "Olivia, I understand now. I was wrong." I smiled. Not out of cruelty. Not out of hate. But out of clarity. "Wrong about what?" I asked softly. "Everything, you yourself. I mocked you. I let her struggle. Let her untangle the shame she had never felt. Let her face the human beneath the mask she wore her entire life." By evening, the family realized I had been the force behind every shift, every ripple, every collapse. They called me, pleaded with me, tried to negotiate. But the only conversation I had was with Carol herself. I flew across town to her office, walking in silently as she sat slumped over her desk. Her eyes widened, fear mixed with recognition, shame, and disbelief. "Olivia," she whispered. "Carol," I replied. "Do you remember the words you said? Poor people can't understand business. Do you remember how everyone laughed at me?" She nodded, tears streaking her face. I leaned close, quiet but deliberate. "I understand business, Carol. I understand people. I understand how betrayal tastes. And now, you will understand what it feels like to be powerless while someone you dismiss takes control." She closed her eyes. That was the moment the scales finally balanced. No theatrics. No screaming. Just quiet, raw human justice. And as I walked away, leaving her in that quiet reckoning, I realized something. Power isn't about dominance. It's about understanding. and I had learned it better than anyone could imagine. The lesson is complete, I whispered to the empty office. The poetic twist? True revenge doesn't need noise. It arrives in silence, and it leaves a mark deeper than any scream ever could. Saturday morning broke with a quiet so heavy it pressed against the windows like a warning. Carol sat alone in her office, papers untouched, phone silent, her empire reduced to whispers and shadows. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't even thought to call anyone but me. My name is Olivia Hartman. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever seen someone stripped bare not by force but by their own choices and arrogance? Felt the weight of years of condescension finally turn inward, reflecting everything they had dished out? That was Carol now. I arrived not with anger, not with theatrics, but with calm precision. She looked up, eyes red, soul exposed, and for the first time, I saw not the predator, but the human beneath the armor she had built from cruelty and laughter. Olivia, she whispered, voice breaking, what now? I smiled softly. Now you live with the truth. The truth of underestimating someone you thought you could crush. The truth that power belongs to the prepared, the patient, the resilient. She nodded, a slow, trembling acknowledgement. No excuses. No denial. Just recognition. I handed her a folder. Inside were the final statements. Her remaining assets redirected responsibly, her debts cleared in a way that wouldn't ruin her forever, but enough that she could never regain her illusions of control. Consider this your final lesson, I said, voice steady, calm. Every laugh you threw at me, every dismissal, every insult, it ends here. Her lips trembled. You could have destroyed me completely. I could, I admitted. But destruction isn't justice. Understanding is. Recognition. Accountability. That's the difference between cruelty and power. We sat in silence for a long moment, the kind that carries weight heavier than words. Outside, the city pulsed and glittered, oblivious to the quiet reckoning in this office. I turned to leave. One last glance. One final acknowledgement. And in that glance she understood. Everything she had taken from me, every sneer, every dismissal, had been repaid not with vengeance, but with precision, dignity, and truth. As I walked away, I whispered to the empty hallway, to the echoes of every insult I had ever endured, to the shadows of the empire she had built on arrogance. Power is silent. Revenge is patient. Justice is inevitable. And with that, the story, the storm, the reckoning, was complete.